Discover 49 incredible space facts that are hidden treasures revealed and transformative beyond the ordinary. Mike Johnson stood by his cluttered desk, papers strewn across it like the scattered stars he loved to teach about unreachable, yet undeniably present. At 36, he had lived a life steeped in passion for science, but now the shadows of financial struggle loomed large over him. In a small Midwestern town where accolades were measured in dollar signs, he felt the weight of each judgmental glance from peers who estimated his worth by his paycheck. Even his own family pushed him to find a real job, one with stability and a 401k, leaving him more isolated with every conversation that turned toward his choice of vocation. His students, depending on their circumstances, flickered from disinterest to a spark of curiosity. Mike couldn't help but hesitate. Was he really making a meaningful impact? The Discovery 49 astonishing facts about space came to him like a shooting star. One moment it wasn't there, and the next, it blazed through his thoughts with brilliance. The stories of astronauts overcoming adversity spoke to him, igniting something deep within that had felt dulled by routine lessons and financial fears. Each fact felt like a hidden treasure, a piece of knowledge he could share that might inspire his students to look beyond the constraints of their lives. Clutching the research in his hands, hope began to unravel threads of despair. Yet, simultaneously, doubt gnawed at him. What authority did he, a struggling teacher with a minimal salary, have to present these groundbreaking findings at the local science fair? It was a platform dominated by the well-to-do, those who viewed success as an inheritance rather than hard work. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the science fair approached, whispers of doubt invaded his mind like clouds blocking out a starry sky. The influence of the town's elite, their skepticism palpable, tightened around him. They viewed his ambition as a disruption, a challenge to an unwritten rule that wealth equated to prominence. The pressure from his family echoed in his thoughts even louder. Get a steady job, Mike. Teaching won't pay the bills. Their voices merged with the town's chorus of skepticism, painting a picture of despair where he was more an outcast than a role model. He remembered his grandfather, an astronaut who defied odds and soared into the cosmos. Knowledge is power, the old man had said, a mantra ringing through Mike's restless nights. With every breath, the weight of expectation curdled his stomach. What if he stood before the crowd and was dismissed as a poor teacher? Flashes of his students' faces, their youthful curiosity shining brightly, anchored him. Yet, doubt remained a relentless adversary. Just when he felt ready to confront them, fear gripped his heart. Could he really bridge these divides? Or would the light of his discoveries dim, overshadowed by the shadows of judgment? In that pivotal moment before stepping to the podium, what was about to unfold felt double-edged. Hope battling fear. Both forces pushed him in opposing directions, sending a tremor through him as he prepared to address a crowd that either esteemed his worth or sought his failure. Resolved but trembling, he took a deep breath, each heartbeat resonating with the questions of what awaited next. Would his voice be enough to transcend the boundaries drawn by wealth? Would it reveal the treasures he fought so hard to unearth? The ordinary. As Mike stepped onto the stage, his heart raced with a cadence that mirrored the uncertainty in his mind. The bright lights illuminated the audience faces, both familiar and foreign. Some were curiously supportive, while others were shadowed by disdain. He scanned the room, every moment stretching into infinity, and slowly, he felt something begin to solidify within him despite the tremors of doubt. Mike cleared his throat, gripping the podium as though anchoring himself. "Good evening," he began, the simple words tumbling out more confidently than he anticipated. The air around him thickened with an electrifying mix of anxiety and excitement. Slowly, he found his rhythm, weaving tales of the cosmos, stories of courage, perseverance, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. He outlined the 49 incredible space facts, each narrative wrapped in the inspiration that had once reignited his own ambitions. With each fact shared, he felt a flicker of connection with his audience. But as he spoke about the marvels of space, doubts drifted in like unwelcome clouds. How could he expect these well-to-do attendees to relate to the struggles depicted in stories of astronauts, many of whom came from backgrounds of privilege? He was teaching them about overcoming obstacles, yet here he was, grappling with perceived failures of his own. Could he inspire them while feeling like an imposter beneath their scrutinizing gazes? He pressed onward, channeling the passion ignited by his grandfather's mantra, "Knowledge is power." The crowd sat in attentive silence, but Mike couldn't shake the feeling of performing for an audience that had little regard for the relentless effort of his craft. He observed a few folded arms and stony expressions. A wave of self-doubt threatened to wash over him again, and for a brief moment, he faltered. Then he recalled his students. Their bright futures remained untethered by the constraints of societal approval. He thought of Jessie, a girl from the economically disadvantaged part of town, whose fascination with planets had put a spark of hope in her otherwise bleak reality. Mike reminded himself that knowledge harvested in classrooms could transcend financial boundaries. He returned to the podium, sharing Jessie's dream of becoming an astronomer, her determination echoing through the space he created. As the stories unfolded, a pinprick of realization ignited within him. He wasn't merely sharing facts. He was exploring the profound impact that passion and knowledge could have on the next generation. This wasn't about wealth or prestige. It was about empowerment, inspiration, and challenging the status quo. Mike's voice steadied. With each fact he presented, he felt himself unshackling the weight of judgment he had internalized for too long. When he finished, a rare stillness enveloped the room, and Mike realized he had dared to expose parts of himself that he had concealed for so long. There was a moment, hung in the air, where his heart raced not with fear but with newfound courage. Applause erupted. It was hesitant at first but soon transformed into a thunderous reverberation that lifted Mike's spirits higher than he ever thought possible. The voices of dissent began to fade, and he filled his chest with pride that momentarily drowned out the naysayers. Yet, as the applause faded and questions began to swirl around from both supporters and skeptics, an urgent thought surged within him. Could he truly turn this moment into more than just a fleeting victory? The clarity of purpose buzzed in the air around him. Possibilities lingered just out of reach, waiting for him to seize them. What he didn't know was how this night would challenge everything he believed about his future and his role in shaping his students' lives. The path ahead was far from clear, but one thing was certain: this was only the beginning. Faced with the exhilarating prospect of change, Mike's pulse quickened as he dared to envision what lay ahead. Would he continue to embrace this newfound freedom as a catalyst for personal and professional growth? And how would the night's events ripple through the community that had long judged him? As questions hung like stars in the night sky, Mike sensed a turning point on the horizon. He just needed to take the leap. The thundering applause began to fade, but its echo stirred a potent cocktail of exhilaration and trepidation deep within Mike. The enthusiastic questions from the audience jolted him from the reverie of his triumph. Each inquiry represented a fork in the road, a pivotal moment that could either confirm or challenge his new sense of self. He stood before them, now transformed, yet still grappling with the implications of his recent vulnerability. What's next? He pondered a question that resonated louder than any applause. He could feel the weight of his unfulfilled ambition tugging at his collar, the thought repeated like a mantra, assembling itself in varying forms. Was he simply a teacher, or could he become a catalyst for change? As he navigated the exchange of ideas, Mike felt his pulse quicken. There was something in the way attendees leaned forward, intrigued, that ignited a spark. With each question, he sensed an obligation to deliver not just knowledge but an invitation for them to rethink their own limitations and biases. What about the students who don't have the same opportunities? One voice asked, echoing his inner conflict. Well, that's the crux of it, isn't it? Mike responded, his voice resonating with newfound authority. Education shouldn't hinge on privilege. Everyone should have a chance to chase their dreams. Affirmation danced in the eyes of his questioner, and he realized that this conversation was the bridge he'd been seeking, a chance to expand beyond the confines of his classroom into a broader dialogue. After the event wound down, Mike was approached by one particularly influential member of the audience, a man whose name was synonymous with philanthropy in the region. "You've got a gift, Mike." His words carried an unsettling weight. "You've ignited something here. Why not take this further? You could lead initiatives that make a tangible difference." The notion both thrilled and terrified him. Initiatives? He had only ever envisioned inspiring students within the walls of his school. "You really think I could do that?" he asked, a flicker of doubt creeping in. "Absolutely. You have the passion. That's what people connect with. You are a beacon for those looking to overcome some of life's most challenging obstacles." With those words, Mike stirred from his internal paralysis. He could no longer dismiss the urge to expand his impact as mere naivete. Each student, like Jesse, represented a chance for transformation, not just within their lives but potentially within the fabric of the community itself. Yet as exhilaration swelled, so did the pressure. What if he stumbled? What if facing a broader audience brought those shadowy doubts crashing back? Mike paced back and forth in his living room that night, the warm glow of the lamp casting an inviting light over his work desk scattered with notes and sketches. He grabbed a blank notepad. This was no time for fear. Instead, it was time to strategize. What skills did he have? How could he leverage his unique experiences, perspectives, and aspirations to embark on this journey? He envisioned a plan: educational workshops, public discussions, outreach programs with local schools in underprivileged areas. He began writing fervently, formulating a vision tangibly aligned with his core belief: knowledge is power, a power that ought to be shared generously. But just as he immersed himself in these possibilities, a flicker of dread halted his pen. Had he bitten off more than he could chew? Was he equipped to lead such ambitious initiatives? The weight of responsibility pressed down anew. Mike sat back, running a hand through his hair, pondering the sheer enormity of what lay ahead. The very notion of rising to this challenge sparked a dual flame of hope and fear within him. The choice was clear: it was time to commit fully and embrace this growth journey. Yet he knew he would have to confront his ambivalence head-on. The resolve solidified within him. Mike was ready to take a leap beyond the safe cocoon of his classroom. He would not let doubt dictate his journey. What he didn't yet realize was how this leap would put him at odds with his own fears and the expectations of those around him. As dawn broke over the horizon, Mike stared at the blueprint he had begun to create. The next step loomed ahead, a swirling fog of uncertainty interlocked with the promise of change. He had committed to transformation, yet nothing would prepare him for the confrontations that awaited: the skeptics, the internalized fears, and the profound realizations that would reshape who he thought he could be. And with that, a question loomed larger than all others. Was he truly prepared to challenge not just himself, but those who had long defined his limits? As the sun climbed higher, its rays filtering through the window, Mike felt a renewed sense of purpose coursing through him. He closed his notebook and stared at the pages he had filled with half-formed ideas and doodles of future workshops. The quiet morning provided a stark contrast to the internal chaos that churned within. In that moment, clarity began to emerge from the fog of uncertainty that had enveloped his thoughts. "Focus," he murmured to himself. What had ignited his passion wasn't merely the applause or the praise of others. It was the profound realization that education had the potential to level the playing field. He envisioned a world where every child, regardless of their background, could access the tools needed to succeed. But dreams alone wouldn't forge a path. Action was necessary, and it began with a commitment to himself. This newfound determination prodded him to confront the logistics of execution. On a blank sheet, he jotted down the specifics: potential venues for his workshops, possible guest speakers who shared his vision, and curriculum outlines that would inspire both students and parents. Each bullet point represented not just an idea, but a stepping stone towards actualizing his dream. Yet, a new wave of doubt crashed over him. Could he even secure a venue? Would anyone attend? With these questions swirling, he resolved to reach out. Mike crafted an email to his school principal, proposing a partnership to create a monthly workshop series dedicated to enriching student experiences. The act of putting his thoughts into words was invigorating, but sending that email would be a leap into the unknown. Who would respond? What if he was dismissed outright? As he hovered over the send button, his finger trembling slightly, a stifling anxiety threatened to halt his progress. But it was in this moment of hesitation that he realized something crucial. This was the crux of his own personal growth. To inspire others, he must first confront his fear of failure. He pressed the button and felt a rush of adrenaline course through him. The day passed with lingering anticipation. Each ringing notification taunted his growing anxiety, amplifying the nagging voice of doubt. Was he bold or foolish in exposing his ideas to scrutiny? But, in the hours that followed, that voice began to soften as replies trickled in. His principal was enthusiastic. There was potential to collaborate on a community outreach initiative. Encouraged by the initial reception, Mike continued to network, reaching out to local organizations, parents, and teachers. Striking up conversations about his vision quickly became a source of both inspiration and anxiety. While many recognized the value of such programs, not all were supportive. One parent confronted him directly, skepticism etched on his brow. "What makes you think you can change anything? It's been like this for years." Mike met his gaze, the challenge igniting a fire within him. "Because change is a choice and I'm willing to make it. Are you?" The exchange left him breathless and slightly rattled, but it also confirmed something essential: this journey would not be easy, and he would face resistance along the way. Each confrontation would force him to sharpen his arguments, to articulate his dreams, and to reaffirm his purpose. That night, amidst the whirlwind of his thoughts, Mike sat down to reflect. He was no longer just teaching lessons. He was forging a new path for himself and those he wanted to impact. Each dialogue, confrontation, or moment of doubt was now a chapter in a story he was determined to write. As he charted a plan for the next steps, a knot of uncertainty knotted again in his stomach. Would he persist in this journey despite the growing challenges? This question lingered, intertwined with the exhilarating spark of possibility. As he jotted down his reflections, Mike felt an insistent pull toward one significant confrontation: his own fears. What defining moment would arise that would force him to either succumb to doubt or transform it into a foundation of resilience? The pages now held not just aspirations, but the raw material of a narrative waiting to unfold. In order to truly challenge the limits set by others, he would confront the greatest opponent of all: himself. The following week brought with it a tangible shift in Mike's perspective. He walked through the school hallways with a sense of purpose, the initial high of his email response igniting a quiet determination. He was meticulously detailing his workshop plans, but an unsettling sense of urgency hung in the air. He understood that ideas meant nothing without action to back them up. The enthusiasm he felt needed to be converted into something that resonated and inspired others. Each day, he arranged meetings with different stakeholders: teachers, parents, and local leaders. With every conversation, he sensed the weight of their expectations resting on his shoulders. A daunting thought began to crystallize. This was not merely about sharing his vision. It was about becoming a catalyst for change. What would it mean if he failed to fully commit to this goal? His heart raced as he approached the group of teachers in the lounge one morning. They gathered around, some sipping coffee, others reviewing lesson plans. He cleared his throat, an instinctual pang of anxiety tugging at him. "Hey everyone, I wanted to discuss some ideas I have for after-school workshops aimed at enriching student learning." As he articulated his vision, he noticed their varying reactions. Some nodded encouragingly, while others crossed their arms. Curiosity mingled with skepticism. When he finished, an older teacher named Mrs. Connors leaned forward. "It sounds ambitious, Mike, but do you really think the administration will back you? They're notoriously reluctant about new programs." The weight of her question hung heavy in the air. For a fleeting moment, doubt seeped into his mind, but he composed himself. I've already spoken with the principal and she's open to the idea. But I need your support to make it happen. I can't do this alone. The room murmured, a mixture of agreement and hesitation. As he engaged in dialogue, each voice pressed against the walls of his own uncertainty. The realization struck him. The path forward wouldn't be one of singular determination, but rather a collaborative effort brimming with opportunity and potential conflict. They say the hardest part is getting started, Mike continued, attempting to reignite enthusiasm. Imagine what we can achieve if we unite our resources and expertise to expand students' horizons. After that meeting, he felt both exhilarated and overwhelmed. The conversations revealed something deeper, a struggle for authenticity amidst unyielding expectations. He could feel the internal conflict echoing within him. Could he balance his ambition with the need for collaboration? Each concern raised by his peers surfaced his own lingering self-doubt. Later that evening, he reread an article about influential leaders who faced criticism yet persevered. Each story was a testimony to resilience, a testament to willingness to confront opposition. Mike found inspiration in how they had transformed their fears into stepping stones. They faced their audience not as invincible leaders but as vulnerable humans committed to a greater cause. As he closed his laptop, a new resolve emerged. He would organize a small pilot workshop to demonstrate the potential of his ideas. This wasn't just about him. It was about proving the merit of his vision to others. And with that, he began drafting an outline, excitement mingling with apprehension coursing through him. However, in the quiet of the night, doubts began to creep back in. What if the workshop failed? What if he opened the door only to find that no one was interested? He paced the room, grappling with the clash of determination and fear. The prospect of inadequacy gnawed at him, but amid this turmoil, clarity began to emerge. Perhaps within this conflict lay the true test of his resolve, the willingness to take risks, to be vulnerable, to embrace failure as part of growth. With a deeper understanding of his motivations surfacing, Mike felt invigorated, ready to forge ahead. It was time to confront the paradox. Could he inspire change while grappling with self-doubt? As he prepared for the pilot workshop, he realized another trial awaited him. The workshop would bring not only scrutiny but also a critical year of self-discovery. Would he rise to meet the challenge, or would doubt undermine all his efforts? The next day would reveal more than just feedback. It would lay bare the contours of his own identity, the mirror reflecting his transformation. Mike awoke the next day feeling the weight of responsibility heavier than ever. The nervous flutter in his stomach spoke volumes about his anticipation for the pilot workshop. Today was not just any day. It would signal the potential shift he yearned for, both for the students and himself. As he walked into school, he wrestled with both fear and excitement. The sharp fluorescent lights bounced off the linoleum floor, illuminating thoughts of failure and success, coiling around his mind like a storm. He was acutely aware that he was not merely testing a workshop. He was setting a precedent for what he might hope to achieve in the future. He had spent the previous night finalizing materials, practice runs of what he would say. Yet a sense of inadequacy loomed over the preparation. What if the students don't respond? What if I falter? The hypothetical scenarios crowded his mind as he unlocked his classroom door, ready to set the stage. The clock ticked loudly, each second a reminder of the minutes slipping away until the afternoon session began. He stepped outside, deep breaths anchoring him as he visualized the potential his ideas held. In this small moment of lucid thought, he recognized that even if it didn't unfold as planned, there lay an opportunity for learning, an opportunity to redefine failure in his own terms. Soon enough, students began to trickle in, their initial expressions a mix of curiosity and indifference. As they settled into the desks, Mike felt that familiar pang of self-doubt creep back. Would they be as enthusiastic as he envisioned, or would their apathy reflect his own insecurities? "Welcome, everyone," he began, attempting to sound more confident than he felt. "Today, we're going to explore some interesting topics that can turn your perspective on learning upside down." A flicker of interest crossed a few faces, but he needed more to ignite the room. As he delved into the workshop's plans, interactive activities that encouraged creativity and critical thinking, he watched the students closely. Their demeanor began to shift, the initial skepticism melting into intrigue. Questions emerged, laughter broke through monotony, and conversations sparked between them. He felt an exhilarating rush. This was the engagement he had hoped for. However, as the excitement reached a crescendo, Mrs. Connors poked her head through the doorway, arms crossed. She silently observed, her expression inscrutable. His heart sank. Was she judging his every move, waiting for a misstep to validate her earlier skepticism? When their eyes met, he forced a smile, yet he could sense her critical gaze weighing on him. This was a moment of truth, an opportunity for affirmation or despair hinged on the reactions from a seasoned educator who knew the ropes far better than he did. While he facilitated a group activity, one student shared an unexpected insight that caught Mike off guard. "I didn't think we could work together and actually enjoy learning." It was a simple statement but carried profound implications. For a fleeting moment, he felt a surge of triumph, a hint of vindication against the self-doubt that had beleaguered him since he began this initiative. After the session ended, students filtered out with animated chatter, their laughter echoing down the hallway. He basked in the afterglow, hopeful that seeds of change had been planted, yet still acutely aware of the specter of judgment lingering in Mrs. Connor's presence. As he gathered his materials, she approached him. "I have to admit, Mike, that was surprisingly engaging. But what are your next steps? You know you'll need to back this up with more than just enthusiasm if you want real support." Her words struck him. It was a direct challenge to his vision, calling for action beyond theoretical conceptualizations. Did he have the resolve to follow through, to confront the administrative hurdles that lay ahead? Pressure and anxiety entwined as he responded, "I know there is more to do. I'm ready to dive deeper into this." He left the classroom that day transformed, the pilot workshop a catalyst for personal development. Yet the lingering question remained, could he sustain this initial success? Or was it merely an illusion, fragile and fleeting? The stakes had risen. He needed to strategize moving forward, but the unpredictability of collaboration threatened to shake his foundations once more. The following weeks would test his commitment and resilience as he aimed for something greater. The time had come to face the administration, to navigate the delicate balance between inspiration and the harsh realities of institutional resistance. Would he rise to the challenge, or would the weight of expectations pull him under? The days turned into a whirlwind of preparation for Mike as he stepped into the next phase of his journey. Each morning, as he sat at his cluttered desk, he faced a daunting task: transforming the energized chaos of his pilot workshop into a structured program that could gain serious backing from the administration. The prospect filled him with both excitement and something dark and gnawing, a fear of inadequacy that echoed in his mind every time he envisioned himself presenting to the higher-ups. He drafted proposal after proposal. Each page filled with strategic outlines and anticipated outcomes seemed to morph more into his own inner demons than a professional roadmap. The voices in his head whispered, "What if they don't take you seriously? What if you're just a fad?" Yet, in those moments of self-disbelief, flickers of clarity emerged. He knew this was more than just a plan. It was an opportunity for growth, both personally and professionally. On a particularly rainy afternoon, armed with a folder containing his meticulously crafted proposals, Mike found himself standing before the administration council. A prolonged silence filled the room, glassy stares encouraged by the polished table that reflected a stark difference from the warm, chaotic environment of his classroom. Kicking off the presentation, he purposefully made eye contact, doing his best to channel the enthusiasm he felt during his workshop. But he also sensed the weight of unyielding scrutiny. "What you witnessed during my workshop was a small piece of a much larger vision," he began, his voice steadying as he spoke. The prospect of failure loomed with each moment, yet he pressed on, tapping into the energy he experienced with his students. Learning can ignite inspiration, fuel collaboration, and empower curiosity. Words flowed more freely, buoyed by the memory of those shared laughs and insightful observations from his class. But as he presented detailed plans that delineated every step of his initiative, He caught the withering gaze of Mrs. Connors, sitting among the council members. The piercing look made a knot tighten in his gut. Could he really convince her and the others that his ideas were worth investing in? Each question they posed felt like a test, challenging the very core of his commitment to undergo this transformation. "I senti that just a momentary spark. Mike?" One member queried. "What about long-term outcomes? Can you actually prove this will lead to lasting changes?" The question struck him like a blow, and suddenly, doubt crept back in like an unwelcome guest. Was it truly sustainable? Could he translate the challenging excitement of that one successful workshop into something institutional and enduring? "No doubt, there will be initial enthusiasm," he replied, struggling to maintain his conviction. "But it's the momentum we build from those sparks that can create a new learning culture." His heart raced with an intensified sense of urgency, for he understood that this was a moment that could propel him forward or leave him stagnant in self-disappointment. After the meeting, he walked out feeling as though he had both spoken truths and skirted realities. The approval, or lack thereof, would shape his next moves, and a pit of uncertainty swarmed in his stomach. Returning to his classroom, the warmth of the students felt like a distant memory. The reality of institutional expectations loomed larger than life. He had approached the administration with the enthusiasm and hope that had sparked within him, yet the council's skeptical responses had him questioning if he had the courage to embrace his own vision despite their doubts. Needles of perspiration danced down his collar as he made this back-and-forth journey within his mind, ultimate clarity both tantalizingly close and yet frighteningly distant. The quest to bridge inspiration with institutional support would require more than charisma. It would demand resilience and strategic maneuvering. As he stayed late that evening, surrounded by half-filled coffee cups and scattered notes, he made a silent vow. He would not give in to the looming shadows of failure. The potential for real impact existed, and he just needed to find a way in a path through the intricate maze of administrative processes, a strategy that could yield validation and support. Determination washed over him. What he didn't yet understand was the depth of inner strength he would need to discover, an arsenal of skills and strategies yet untested. The real challenge lay ahead, and as he reviewed notes again, uncertainty twisted into a steely resolve. He needed a plan to not only execute, but to execute flawlessly. But first, a meeting with Mrs. Connors was looming, and she would not pull her punches. A confrontation was inevitable. Would he be able to hold his ground and defend his vision? With the afternoon sun hanging low in the sky, Mike prepared himself for the impending confrontation with Mrs. Connors. The weight of the folders filled with his proposals felt heavier than it had all week. They weren't just papers. They were manifestations of his aspirations, each one a silent plea for validation. He leaned back in his chair, trying to summon confidence from the depths of his resolve. As the clock ticked ominously, he revisited his talking points. He needed precision, clarity, and above all, conviction. His voice replayed in his head. Learning can ignite inspiration. But now it felt almost fragile, like a childhood memory vulnerable to the harshness of adult realities. What if Mrs. Connors tore it apart? When she finally entered his classroom, the air shifted. She immediately surveyed the space, her expression unreadable. The transition from the administrative boardroom to the coziness of his workshop was stark, but he hoped the familiar environment might soften her stance. "Mike," she began, "I appreciate you making time for this discussion." There was a modicum of warmth in her tone that he clung to, but the calculated look in her eyes belied any optimism. "Thank you, Mrs. Connors. I'm eager to hear your thoughts on my proposals." He consciously steadied his breathing and sat up a little straighter, a gesture of determination concealed beneath a mask of casual confidence. "You're passionate about this initiative, I'll give you that. But passion alone doesn't ensure sustainability." Her words sliced through the atmosphere, each one deliberate. "You need data, evidence, and a clearer framework." Her critique hit close to home, where his insecurities nested. He was no stranger to doubt, and although he recognized the necessity of her statements, confrontation was psychologically taxing. Yet instead of deflecting, he chose to confront his fears head-on and replied, "I realize that, and I plan to integrate data collection methods that will reflect long-term impacts. The workshop offered insights into student engagement, and I can build on that evidence. Mrs. Connors raised her eyebrows slightly, not dismissive but intrigued. It was a shift, albeit minor, that gave him hope. Go on, she said, leaning in an invitation or perhaps an examination. I envision a program where feedback is continuous, he explained, his mind racing with possibilities, using surveys and performance metrics to track engagement and understanding. The initial spark can grow into a sustained flame if we monitor its heat. He shared his revised strategy and outlined steps to integrate her suggestions. As he spoke, her expressions morphed from scrutiny to curiosity. Each improvement he shared reflected not just a response to her criticisms but a testament to his own humbling journey throughout this process. This wasn't merely for the administration's approval. This was about creating a genuine learning culture that inspired his students. Yet as he wrapped up, the challenge in her eyes returned. You seem to anticipate my concerns, which is commendable, but there are budgetary constraints and staff buy-in to consider as well. Can you secure support from your colleagues? You know, many aren't convinced. There it was the ambush Mike couldn't avoid. I can, he asserted more boldly than he felt. I think by involving them from the outset, we can harness collective insights and create excitement, rather than push them into something they're skeptical of. Her stern expression softened momentarily, and Mike sensed a shift in her perception. He was no longer that hesitant new teacher but a proactive leader shaping his vision. Yet gnawing doubt lurked. He was pushing his limits, and the stakes were becoming alarmingly clear. Mike, she said slowly, this isn't just about flash. It's about embedding this into our culture long-term. You need an undeniable rationale, not just your enthusiasm. As she spoke, clarity began to crystallize. He realized that success lay not just in defending the initiative but in fostering leadership within himself and among his colleagues. An ecosystem of shared responsibility. When the meeting concluded, Mike felt as though he had emerged from trial by fire, stronger and more defined. What remained troubling was the lingering uncertainty: could he inspire a collective leap into the unknown? This was merely the beginning of an arduous journey towards institutional acceptance and personal mastery. The only thing he knew for certain was that he had to follow through, not only with conviction but as a confident and analytical advocate for change. With a new sense of urgency, he decided to schedule a meeting with his colleagues, ready to frame his proposals in a way they defined compelling. He felt the weight of expectation pressing against his shoulder, but this time it may just transform into wings. What he didn't anticipate was how one of his closest colleagues would react to a revelation that would reshape his understanding of teamwork and trust. Mike spent the next few days in a state of heightened focus, revising his strategies and gathering materials that would demonstrate the value of his initiative. He pored over recent studies highlighting the benefits of engaging pedagogy, gleaning data that would not only impress Mrs. Connors but also resonate with his colleagues. Each statistic, each illuminating anecdote from other educators, became a building block of his confidence, a counter to the doubts that had plagued him. On the evening before the meeting, he unfolded a large sheet of paper on his dining table, sketching out his presentation. As the pencil glided across the page, it felt like he was not just drafting a proposal but charting a new course for his own professional identity. He wasn't just Mike the teacher anymore, he was Mike the advocate. Yet even as he meticulously crafted his arguments, a nagging fear lingered behind every detail. What if they dismissed his ideas outright? What if someone challenged his authority or experience? The possibility gnawed at his resolve, but he pushed back against it, determined not to succumb. That morning, he arrived early to the school, setting up the projector and practicing his delivery in front of the empty classroom. There was a rhythmic quality to the silence, a calm before the storm. Each time he rehearsed, his voice grew steadier, his posture more assured. With every passing minute, he recognized that this was as much about rallying his peers as it was about the initiative itself. An awakening of sorts unfolded within him. This was a chance to present himself as a leader. When his colleagues began to trickle in, an undercurrent of tension coiled in his stomach. He exchanged greetings, trying to gauge their mindset. Their faces revealed little, curiosity mingled with skepticism. "Let us get started," he said, forcing a smile while striving to mask the whirlwind inside. He clicked to the first slide, showcasing the data he had summarized. As he spoke, engagement fluctuated in the room. Some colleagues appeared intrigued, nodding along at key points, while others leaned back, arms crossed, as if fortifying themselves against any persuasion. It was a dynamic that Mike had anticipated but never truly grasped until now. This wasn't simply about presenting facts. It was about cultivating an environment where his peers felt empowered to share their concerns and ideas. He paused, letting the questions simmer in the air. Then, he directed the discussion, inviting feedback on the proposal without defense. "What do you think are the biggest hurdles?" he asked, encouraging a conversation rather than a critique of his vision. This approach sparked a fervent exchange. Ideas bounced across the table as reluctance turned to constructive dialogue. One colleague, Anna, questioned the feasibility of the time commitment. Another, Brian, shared his own experiences from a similar initiative that had started with promise but faltered under a lack of support. Feeling a surge of adrenaline, Mike listened intently, steering the conversation toward solutions rather than problems. Their individual experiences became the backdrop for a collective narrative where they could reimagine the initiative. If they could reshape their skepticism into something actionable, they would collectively own it, as he had hoped. Before he knew it, he was describing ways to involve the staff in the implementation process, assigning roles based on strengths instead of a top-down approach. His vision expanded to include them as pivotal players, fostering a sense of ownership. "We're all in this together. The more voices we have, the stronger our case will be," he said with growing fervor. The atmosphere shifted. Arms unfolded, and expressions softened. A camaraderie emerged, one that Mike had not anticipated. Each question and critique sharpened his arguments, and in turn, he could see the reluctance of some of his colleagues dissolve as they began to feel the groundwork of potential change laid before them. As the meeting wound down, he felt exhilarated, yet bewildered. Could this momentum sustain itself beyond this room? Would they take his ideas to heart when faced with administrative constraints? The meeting had rekindled a conflicted sense of optimism within him, one rooted in shared endeavor, but vulnerable to institutional inertia. Just as he began to feel buoyed by their engagement, he noticed Anna's expression change. The dawning realization on her face was punctuated by an unsettling reaction. She raised a finger, hesitating before speaking. "Mike, are you sure you're prepared for this? Some of us aren't as ready for change as you think," she warned, her voice a mixture of concern and challenge. In that moment, Mike understood that he stood on a precipice. His next steps embodied both the promise of collaboration and the threat of resistance. The vision he had shaped was not yet sealed. It required continual nurturing, and now, more than ever, he needed to confront the complexities of leadership. What lay ahead was uncertain, but he recognized one pivotal truth. The path to transformation wouldn't merely be paved with passion and data. It would demand a deep and sometimes difficult commitment to guiding others through fear into trust. As days turned into weeks, Mike embraced the complexity of leading his initiative with a newfound tenacity. Empowered by the collaborative discussions with his colleagues, he began to see the contours of challenge transform into opportunity. Each meeting now inspired a deeper connection and collective enthusiasm for their shared vision and educational framework that truly encompassed all students, irrespective of their backgrounds. Through tireless effort and persistent dialogue, Mike meticulously built a comprehensive proposal that incorporated feedback from his peers. It was a living document, alive with commitment and ideas. The proposals were not just statistics on paper. They embodied the aspirations that fueled not only his ambitions but those of his colleagues, and importantly, of their students. When the time arrived to present the refined proposal to the administration once more, Mike felt a solid confidence coursing through him, an assurance rooted in the preparation he had undertaken. He was no longer simply the teacher at the front of the classroom. He was a leader, driven by a collective vision that demanded attention. His chest filled with purpose as he entered the meeting room, fortified by the support of his colleagues, each one shimmering with expectancy. "This," he thought, "is our moment." As he articulated their plans before the panel, He emphasized the importance of cultivating a nurturing learning environment where every student could thrive. Yet, something within him pulsed with the sense that this proposal was not just for institutional approval. It was a testament to the journey of transformation he had undertaken alongside those who shared his passion. Week after week, momentum built within the administration, culminating in a meeting that felt electric not with uncertainty, but with the anticipation of substantive change. When at last the principal shared her verdict, her nodding head coupled with supportive remarks felt like wind beneath his wings. The initiative was approved. It was an exhilarating moment. The validation wasn't solely a reflection of success in the conventional sense. It became a landmark for Mike personally. He stood at the precipice of a new beginning, recognizing how far he had come from the uncertain teacher weighed down by the shadows of doubt. As the outreach programs began taking shape, Mike was filled with a profound sense of accomplishment. Workshops flourished into community collaborations that fostered excitement among students, parents, and educators alike. No longer operating in isolation, he felt a palpable shift in the school's atmosphere, a harmonious tapestry of growth, woven together by shared aspirations. But beyond the success of the program lay a deeper realization. It was the thrill of empowerment that had transformed him into a confident advocate for change. He understood that true growth emerged not merely from the accolades but from fostering trust within oneself and extending that trust outward. As the program thrived, Mike enjoyed recognition not just from the administration, but from the broad community, a recognition he once thought unattainable. Parents voiced their appreciation, and students echoed their gratitude for the changes wrought from what had begun as an uncertain spark within him. On an unassuming day, as he reviewed feedback from the newly launched programs, a handwritten note from Jesse, one of his brightest students, caught his eye. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for believing in us. I'm dreaming bigger because you showed me how." In that moment of profound fulfillment, Mike realized that his journey was not merely about conquering his fears, but inspiring others to chase their own potential. The cycle of mentorship had shifted, solidifying the legacy he wished to create, a legacy of empowerment that rippled through the generations, fueled by knowledge and passion. With firm resolve, he stood by the window, gazing out at the students milling about the school grounds. This is only the beginning, he thought, the horizon rich with possibilities. Despite the obstacles ahead, the weight of doubt felt lighter than before. Now, humility was woven into his understanding that the journey of transformation never truly ends, it evolves. The culmination of that evolution was nothing less than a fulfilled promise, a commitment he made to challenge the status quo and elevate every student's pursuit of knowledge. He achieved not just recognition but the intrinsic acknowledgement that he had grown into the proactive leader. He aspired to be a beacon, supporting others on their paths to transformation. The road ahead was bright, and Mike felt ready to stride confidently along its path, not just for himself, but for every eager mind awaiting a chance to shine. Now, don't wait another moment to experience more exclusive emotional stories that resonate with personal empowerment. Subscribe immediately to our channel so you won't miss out on the next inspiring journey ahead. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and share your reactions and theories about this moving conclusion in the comments. And for those who need to see this transformation, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends. Show them the magic of personal overcoming stories. Your support is crucial, so act now and be part of this incredible journey.